We can often have this perception of ourselves that we're not narcissistic. I mean, not to throw Moses under the bus, but he did write about himself once in Numbers chapter 12, verse 3. Remember, he wrote the book. Just keep that in mind. And the verse is, quote, "Now Moses was very humble, more humble than any other person on earth." Just saying.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Today's episode is brought to you by Faith Street. Listen, if your church has been feeling scattered and disconnected because of the pandemic, if you're frustrated because it feels like discipleship is slipping through your fingers in your church, I gotta tell you something. It's because discipleship in our churches for too long has been an event and not a habit. So we need tools to help us build these discipleship habits, and I'm so glad that we live in an age where we have technology to help us. And it's even better if you have technology and tools that are built by church leaders for church leaders like you. So you need to check out Faith Street. Faith Street is an iOS and Android app that helps to bring your community together to strengthen those connections between each other and strengthen their commitment to your church. It does this by prompting prayer, mindfulness, generosity, teaching, all these things that are part of being a disciple and building these discipleship habits. So check out this tool. I really want you to check it out and see if it's a good fit for you and your church. faithstreet.com/Malfers gets you 20% off for being one of our listeners. So go to Faith Street, faithstreet.com/Malfers, MALPHURS. See if this is a good fit for you. faithstreet.com/Malfers. Let's dive into the episode.
Hey, welcome back to the Church Revitalization Podcast. And Scott and my name is AJ, are talking about 5 warning signs of narcissistic leadership. So sort of taking this this idea of narcissism, this reality, unfortunately, of narcissism, and I'm going to give you just 5 things to look for in this. And I think we'll have, at least some maybe some general examples and how this might play out in a church situation. But this is something, across the board. This is a human thing, first and foremost, and not a church thing first and foremost, though, maybe some in the world might say in a broad way that you do see this commonly in the church. But certainly clergy are susceptible to this, as are anybody really in a position, in a higher level position of authority.
People are looking to you for help.
Right.
Seeing as you as a respected person,
Mm-hmm.
that can really fuel your ego.
It might actually, yeah. I mean, it really will take a certain level of self-awareness and humility to even, you might say, battle against that, because it could be very easy to slip into that. Scott Ball, you've got a great article. So here's number one. Here's number one this week, Scott. You've got down that one of the warning signs of narcissistic leadership is that this individual may exude self-importance.
Yeah. I mean, if you honestly think that your organization cannot function without you, then first of all, that's just not true. Here's the reality. If you got hit by a truck tomorrow, Sunday would still come, and guess what? People would still be there. Like, somehow they would manage. They would figure a way forward without you. No one is irreplaceable.
True.
And I give this example in the article, Deuteronomy 34, kind of circling back to Moses, actually, that in Deuteronomy 34, Moses dies, and then in the very next verse, we're on to Joshua. It's like, here all these books have been about Moses' leadership, and then in just a couple of verses, it's like, well, he's gone now and moving on. So
and Moses wrote about his own death.
Yeah, I know. Very interesting. Curious how that works. At any rate, all of that to say, you're not more important than Moses. I know I'm not. And so if Moses can kind of get buried in the ground and we move on, that can be true for us too. So if you find yourself seeing, gosh, I just can't get away, I'm too important to this thing, know that that's just factually not true.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe point 1A on this is that a narcissistic leader will attempt to organize the structure in which he is, in which it seems like it couldn't exist.
I'm the center of this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not letting others really have enough information or authority, so that it always has to come back to he or she.
That's really good. Yeah. I mean, I think the leadership of a church is the greatest asset, but it's also its greatest liability. And so to the degree in which you think that this whole thing revolves around you, it's not a healthy place to be.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good one, man. Number 2, got down that their attitude or their actions are entitle focused, that it seems to be that they can just do whatever they want.
Yep. I've seen it firsthand. I maybe, at times even have lived this firsthand. If you feel like you're the exception and not the rule, it's a problem. So if you've got sort of a system set up where, like take, for example, like an HR guideline on how vacations need to be cleared or time off needs to be cleared. There's forms that need to be filled out or whatever. If you're in a multi-staff church, you're more likely to have a situation like that. But you never fill that out. You just tell people, hey, I'm going to be gone. And you don't fill out the forms. It's that kind of stuff where you go, well, I don't have to fill out the forms because I'm kind of the boss and I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
No, you should still do the forms. Fill out the forms like everybody else. You're not better than everyone else. Follow the process, and you set the tone. If you want other people to do things, then I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't delegate tasks. You should do that. But when it comes to processes, and here's how we're supposed to comport ourselves, and here's the way we're supposed to go about doing things, you should model that behavior and not expect other people to do it and you not follow it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the mark of great leaders certainly, model great leadership, and that certainly plays into it. I think this might be an okay place to interject also kind of what we were talking about offline also, Scott. And in addition to acting entitled, sometimes you can just accept entitlement. So maybe somebody that wasn't intending to be narcissistic, though, gets a little bit of entitlement handed to them and accepts it and allows it to happen. Here's a super minor, but maybe can make the point. As we were talking about before, a designated parking spot. So maybe you've got some particular staff spots or senior pastor spot or something else like that. And it might be like the most premium spot. And it would be okay to say, well, they've just always had it. I'm the new pastor. They've always had a pastor parking spot. And it's right by the door. Well, it's up to you whether you want to say, you know what, yeah, sure, I'll take this best spot. Or, hey, you know what, shouldn't this maybe be guest parking? Or, I can park right over by the side door. I'm not going out to my car that often. So there's opportunities in which you can maybe push back against an opportunity to display narcissistic behavior, because you know what, you also never know. Appearances account for a lot of a guest experience, right? And if they roll in on Sunday morning for the first time and the pastor's, designated parking spot is in a premium place, they don't know if that was the pastor saying, this should be my space. Or if it was, 20 years ago, the board wanted to honor the pastor and give him a nice parking spot.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, here's the dirty little secret, right? Like Monday through Friday, you can park wherever you want.
Right.
Because the parking lot's not that full. But on Sunday, you park in the back 40. And let the guest have the good spot. And you're right. You may not have been the one, you didn't give yourself the pastor parking spot, but accepting it is sort of that recognition of, hey, I worked hard for this. I got this position. I've got the title. I should get the parking spot. And and you're right. It does communicate something.
Yeah.
To outsiders.
All right, moving on. Scott, your third point I think is really interesting. I think it'd be good to kind of unpack this, it may be something that a lot of people might not necessarily think of. And so you've got down here that they might speak frequently in generalizations. So this is, I think, a really interesting one.
Yeah. The use of generalizations is about emotional manipulation. So, for example, um, if you are someone, when you're trying to get something done with with someone else on your team, like you've got a staff person or a volunteer or an elder, and you really want them to do what you want them to do. And so when you bring it up, you say, well, a lot of people are saying that they don't like the first service, and people are saying that they're really upset with the music and whatever. That's a generalization, because chances are either no one said that to you or one person said that to you. But when you say people are saying, and to make it sound like there's more people saying something than there actually are, or if you say to somebody, you always do this, or you never do this, that's a generalization, and that's not true. People are way more complex and nuanced than that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the use of generalizations is a narcissistic tactic to manipulate people emotionally, because you can't fight back from that. There's no argument against, if everybody is saying that you're doing a really terrible job at this, if you respond back to that with, well, you tell me who said that, you just seem defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an emotional weapon to get people to see things your way, because there's really no way to fight back. It's going straight to a stick of dynamite, emotionally. And when you're the pastor and you're the one with the title, it's an extra stick of dynamite. I can't push back against that.
Right.
So it's important, if you don't want to be a narcissistic leader, if you find yourself using generalizations, you need to be more self-aware and
Mm-hmm.
be precise with your language and tell the truth. Don't exaggerate.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a level of emotional intelligence to,
Mhm.
to be able to be self-aware enough to recognize that. I mean, hopefully if somebody's listening to this and they're like, wow, three of these are me. I don't know. You may not be clinically narcissistic if you're able to listen to a podcast, recognize some things and want to change.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe more
It's
so
a spectrum, right? Like,
yeah.
most people are on I think to some degree, all of us are narcissistic. And that's kind of the point of, I know we're halfway through this thing, but it's kind of the point what we're trying to tell you is that these are warning signs to watch out for, so that when you see yourself go, ooh, I use generalizations a lot, that you can pull that thing back and rein that thing in. You don't want to get
Right.
to a point where all five of these things you're doing, exhibiting these behaviors, frequently or all the time. That would be bad news. But all of us do these things some of the time, I think. Not to use a generalization. But I think most of us do some of these things some of the time. Is
There
that
you
fair
go.
to say?
It is, because I mean, you could probably make some fairly quick connections back to just, a sin nature
Uh-huh.
that feeds this kind of stuff. And we all need to be careful of that,
Yeah.
So, so I'm glad like you said, halfway through, we are kind of redirecting to who is this for? And what's this episode about?
It's supposed to be about you.
Right. This is not how to detect narcissism in someone else and fix them.
Uh-huh.
You just work on you. How about
Work
that?
on you. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, just a reminder, today's episode is brought to you by Faith Street. This is a product that we really believe in. We wouldn't be talking about it if we didn't think it could help your church. Faith Street is an iOS and Android app that helps to bring communities together. Right now, we all need tools that help to bring our communities together between Sundays. And you still have folks maybe who aren't even attending services in person yet. You need something more than a Facebook page, more than an email newsletter to help bring folks together. And Faith Street is a tool that can help you do that. It's an iOS and Android app that helps bring communities together. I need you to check it out to see if it's a good fit for your church. Go to faithstreet.com/Malfers, see all the features that it's going to bring for you. And because you're one of our listeners, you're going to get 20% off. faithstreet.com/Malfers, faithstreet.com/Malfers, MALPHURS. Check it out.
All right, man. Your next point here is that narcissistic leaders may need a lot of adoration.
Yeah. Everyone wants to be liked.
And, in the pastor context, they get that. I mean, maybe some of you don't.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of you do, though. You do get the adoration.
Uh-huh. I mean, everybody wants to be liked. That's normal, and we're hardwired that way to want to be loved and to be known. And there's nothing wrong or evil about that. I think that's just in God's design for us. But we can take it too far, right?
Hmm.
And so we can try to guard ourselves from criticism. If you have a history of, and this happens, you get pushback from an elder or from a staff person, and your knee jerk response is to fire that person or to make sure that person doesn't get reelected to the board because you don't like that they're giving you flack or criticism. That's not good. Like, you can't surround yourself with just yes people who think you're the best preacher and they love your stuff and they think you're fantastic, and that is not healthy for anybody. Everybody needs to be called on their stuff, and you need people around you who are willing to do that and be honest with you. And so
Hmm.
if you just need adoration constantly and you can't stand criticism and you take retribution against people who call you out
Mm.
on your stuff, that's not good. It's really, 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 really dangerous. And so again, it's normal to want to be liked. We all want to be liked, but if you live for the adoration, it's not healthy.
Yeah. And it's always a good reminder to remember that you are adored by your Father in heaven,
Mm.
and you're redeemed, and that's where your true identity is. And so, yeah, you want some adoration, you got the ultimate adoration. You're saved and you're loved, and you don't need to work hard at drawing that out of others for you.
Uh-huh. Definitely. Yeah. And if what you want to look at is how you respond. Like, so if someone responds, provides some criticism to you or some feedback, and you blow up at that person, and if that's a person who you oversee or who's under you in some way, what do you think? What are the odds they're going to speak up to you again next time?
Mm, yeah.
And that's how it happens. It happens through, someone says something negative to you, you blow up at them, and they just go, I learned my lesson. I know I can't tell them the truth. And over time, you just have a whole bunch of people who don't tell you the truth. And that's not good for anybody.
Yeah. All right, man. Number 5 is a lack of empathy, which, that looks like a pretty solid fit for where we've come to in the list here.
Yeah. This is I think clinically, and I'm not a therapist or a psychologist by any means, but I believe that the number one sort of qualifying marker for a narcissist, and certainly for like a sociopath of some kind, is a lack of empathy. Just the inability to see something from another person's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And this is extremely dangerous. I mean, God's called us to love one another. And when we filter our lives through our own ego, we become blind to the spiritual needs of others. And those demand our full attention. I mean, if we can see somebody in need and do nothing about it or feel nothing for them, it's dangerous. I mean, I think about the parable of uh, the Good Samaritan, right? Where you have the religious people walk past this man who has been beaten and robbed, and
Mm.
he's in danger and he's hurt, and they're so consumed with their own stuff and their own ego that they can't put themselves in that that person's position and think, that could be me. I could be the one that got beaten and robbed and and be in need of help. That is a really, really dangerous place to be when you can't feel other people's pain.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And this is something that we can work on. And it's hard. I mean, hey, I'm uh, self-proclaimed, not happily, not necessarily empathetic person. But it takes self-awareness, to really try to be better at that.
Yeah.
But we can. I mean, I know I'm not alone. There's other people that our initial inclination is not an empathetic one, but you can improve in that, and you can have a desire for that. So yeah, and which maybe is worth saying any one of these things doesn't necessarily make you a narcissist. And again, we're not therapists or clinicians here that can diagnose anybody.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, we all here we speak in generalizations all the time, don't we? Anybody can be susceptible to, one or more of these things. We're not trying to label you now a narcissist.
Yeah.
And a lot of these things you can improve in, and so that self-awareness, that emotional intelligence, or developing a higher emotional quotient can help overcome a lot of this. But these are just some, as we said, these are warning signs to watch out for. And we want you to be self-aware because, it's a reflection of your leadership, and it's an opportunity for a greater level of leadership. I mean, you've got a great purpose that you're going after, hopefully a big vision, and you need to be an effective leader to help lead your church that way. So
Yeah,
kind of the
definitely.
idea.
And, at the end of the day, no one becomes a narcissistic leader overnight. And that's the point. You slowly creep that direction over time. And I can think of examples that I've witnessed and, through the work that we do with churches, and, really good, solid, Christian leaders who love the Lord, whose leadership just slips because they're not self-aware. They lack that self-awareness to know, man, over time, I have surrounded myself with a whole bunch of people who just tell me what I want to hear and never tell me the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look around and the church is struggling or declining, and they go, gosh, how did that happen? And they don't see it. They don't see it anymore. And again, that doesn't happen overnight. So the hope for this article and the hope for this podcast today is that you would think about these 5 things and go, where do I see these things in myself? So number 1, exuding self-importance. Do I feel like this whole thing revolves around me? And if I mean, certainly we're all important to our churches. Okay. So you're not unimportant to your church, but it doesn't revolve around you. The church would still be there tomorrow if you were gone. So number 2, acts entitled. If you're either that entitlement was bestowed upon you and you've received it, or you've built it for yourself. In either case, we're to be servant leaders. Number 3, using generalizations, which we're becoming self-aware. We apparently use these quite a bit ourselves on this podcast, but try to avoid saying always and never, and don't exaggerate in order to emotionally manipulate others. If you live for number 4, if you live for adoration, you will die when you don't have it, and so it's not a healthy place to be. And finally, number 5, never lack empathy. Just be able to see something from another person's point of view and truly listen to people, listen to their pain, hear their story. When someone's talking, don't be thinking about your response to them. Like, be fully present in what it is that they're saying, so that you can respond to that. So keep tabs on these 5 things, and I think you're going to be okay.
Well, thanks for joining us this week on the Church Revitalization Podcast. Get in and read today's show notes, Scott's article at malfersgroup.com. And we'll be excited to have you back again next week with some fresh content. God bless your ministries, and we'll be praying blessings on you.
Thanks again to our friends at Faith Street for supporting this episode and for providing such a great tool for churches. This is something you need to check out. faithstreet.com/Malfers. It's going to give you 20% off this iOS and Android app that helps bring communities together. So check out our friends at Faith Street, faithstreet.com/Malfers, and faithstreet.com/Malfers, MALPHURS. Check it out. Thanks again to our friends at Faith Street. We'll see you next time.